Hello, and welcome to our Analytics in 20 webinar series. My name is Kate Leonard, and today I have the distinct pleasure to be joined by industry experts, innovators, researchers, and absolute leaders in the generative AI and life sciences community. On today's webinar, Dr. Richard Vonk, Dr. Ian Brown, and Neeraj Golmathal will share their expertise on the topic of generative AI in life sciences. Where is it going? What's the hype? What matters? And what do we need to pay attention to? Unfortunately, Fausto is unable to join us today, but will join us for conversations in the future. This technology, generative AI, really has the potential to change the way that we interact with data and analytics. It's already happening, and it's only going to happen more and more across more verticals, in more industries, and in more spaces. But in life sciences in particular, what are the possibilities of this technology? What's real? What's hype? What failures are we seeing? And how can we manage the roadblocks, the changes, and even the regulations ahead? Now, audience, to save time and ensure that we're diving straight in to the conversation, we're going to skip through introductions and really invite each of you to connect with our panelists via LinkedIn and learn more about their background and the work that they're doing in this space. And for now, we're going to ask a few questions because I know that you want answers. So, Richard, Ian, Neeraj, let's jump right in. We know that there's a lot of hype around generative AI. Some of those hype areas are in the topic of drug development and drug discovery, along with a variety of other areas across the full pharmaceutical process. Across all of your backgrounds, we're really representing the full pharmaceutical life sciences value chain just on this call at this moment. And we'd love to kind of hear, your perspective around what's changing, what's being impacted, what's transforming. So Richard, let's start with you. How is generative AI transforming or even impacting the work that you and your teams are doing at Bayer?
Yeah, thanks for that question. There's a lot of hype, as you said, around generative AI, especially in the pharma industry now. I can speak a little bit about development arena because that's what my specialty is. What we are looking at today is a more tactical application of generative AI, opportunistic even. There's certain topics like writing clinical study reports, for example, that you can where you can implement generative AI techniques. Narratives is one example that we are tackling. Right? Writing narratives is a tedious process, expensive, takes a long time. You need to dig through a lot of data. If you use generative AI, you can actually substantially reduce that time. So thinking about how do we use the results of clinical trials and turn that to information that we can act on quickly, that is a major focus that we're having in clinical development, oncology clinical development at Bayer.
Richard, what's that timeline look like right now? So we know that clinical study reviews, clinical study documentation is a major holdup within the clinical trial process that then yields delays within the full drug development process. With what you and your team are working on, what are we seeing in terms of time to value or advanced efficiency and productivity and speed?
With respect to the narratives, it's basically down from weeks to a couple of days, right? So that's quite substantial. The report writing we are only experimenting with, but I would think that could be considerable. Having said that, these are tactical points, right? If you look at the whole development chain, it's great to solve some of the issues that happen basically after database close, right? When you have the data in-house, how can you come to actionable insight? I think the real impact will be if we can move generative AI to a more strategic use case, where we look at the whole development process, the whole development chain, if you want. Right? Think about an oncology clinical trial, a late-stage clinical trial takes years. imagine that we can use generative AI to optimize the protocols, to optimize the patient population, and move that from say 5 years to 3 years with less patients. That is a real substantial impact, and I think that's what I'm interested to look at much more than the more tactical or opportunistic use cases.
Team, we're not even 10 minutes in yet, and we're already hearing some pretty specific use cases, some pretty specific examples, and hearing exact time parameters too of how much time can be saved and how much faster we can get those drugs to market for patients in need. Neeraj, let's turn it over to you. We know that you're a leader in this space. You talk a lot about generative AI in a variety of different formats, variety of different means and mediums within life sciences. Share your thoughts a bit in regards to this work. How is GenAI transforming? How's it impacting, or how's it even changing the way that you and your teams operate at GSK Vive?
Yeah, so thank you, Kate. For me, GenAI is beyond hype. I'm a very pro GenAI person, and I do believe it is making already a huge impact, and it will continue to make impact. My team looks after, of course, commercial and med affairs, and from that perspective, ultimately, we want to get the best patient outcomes. And to achieve that, our idea is to make the best of this technology to reach our healthcare professionals. Now, when we reach our healthcare professional, it starts with communication through emails, through one-to-one emails, through mass emails, and through other channels. And that's where the first thing comes, where classical AI, where we were already working on, now Gen AI combination is making it really enhanced in terms of the whole customer experience. We are able to reach our customers much better than before. For empowering our in-field teams, whether it is our medical science liaisons or sales reps, we make sure there is next best action tool available to them, where obviously the whole crunching is done by AI in terms of next best action, but Gen AI actually can provide them insights in terms of what exactly they can do in the language they easily understand, and they could be, it could be in different languages in different countries and based on their cultures. So yeah, in that sense, we want the customer trust through the best in-field team excellence and impact. So yeah, these are some of the use cases we're working on.
So Neeraj, it sounds like, Richard is primarily looking at the technical applications of Gen AI, looking at the data strategy, understanding data review, material review, whereas your team is kind of on the other end of that value chain, looking at patient engagement, provider site engagement, and commercialization as well.
Absolutely. And from me, the perspective, I do believe in the theory that Gen AI or AI is not just a tool or technology, as we've been talking about. It is more of a new digital species, which is enhancing our work multiple folds, which human beings were able to do. So from that perspective, the size and scale which we are observing is enormous in any of these use cases. And particularly when it comes to the customer interaction or the HCP interactions, whether it is summarizing the chats with them and, then predictions based on that, or as I said, it is next best action, or any communication which we send to our customers, we really want the best of the content possible, whether it is content consumption or content generation, or in fact, technology creation from that perspective.
Got it. So I love that you say a new digital species. I think that's a really interesting term. And I'm sure that many folks of our audience are probably going to reach out wanting to learn more about that. But so far for the audience, we're seeing that Gen AI is applicable across the entire pharmaceutical value chain. But we also know that there's applications of Gen AI in other industries that could be applied into life sciences that sometimes we just don't even know about, or we don't understand how they could be applied or how they could be added in. So I want to turn it over to Ian. Ian, you are an AI and Gen AI expert in a variety of different channels, and you see uses of Gen AI not just in life sciences, but you're really looking at these use cases and examples kind of across the board, across various different industries. So Ian, from your perspective and from what you're seeing, from the engagements that you're having, what are some of the must-haves, right? Some of the foundational requirements that companies either need to think through or have in place before implementing AI and Gen AI technologies?
Yeah, thank you, Kate. And it's an interesting one because we're talking about generative AI and we're talking about the future and all of the things that are now possible. But the challenges of the past haven't gone away. And having obviously things like a strong data structure, foundational data capabilities as part of this development is still required for all of this. And a lot of the things we're exploring. So I'm lucky enough to work across multiple sectors, as you mentioned. And it's interesting to see where there's lessons to be learnt from more mature sectors to those that are dabbling with this for the first time. And actually, their usage of AI might still be quite simplistic in the applications of it. And a lot of work is being done, a lot of good work actually is being done on the generative side to enhance data, right? To make it more accurate, to make it more robust, to abstract away from privacy concerns, which we know also are a challenge within these applications that we're talking about, and actually to be able to simulate and stress systems in a generative way by creating new synthetic observations. I think that there's cross-industry learnings that can be seen from that. And actually, we're doing a lot of work in financial services at the moment to help make better risk decisions, but being able to simulate data to a high degree of accuracy, which is now possible with the capabilities we're talking about here, have direct implications into things like drug discovery, right? Where having high quality anonymized data sets that will help you identify the key biological markers and insights that's existing in there could help with that. So I think being able to take those lessons, being able to apply these approaches across sector are important. And I think to Neeraj's point around personalization, we've seen the use of personalization a lot in other sectors, in the retail sector, for example. It's very, I mean, it doesn't take a lot of experience in the sector to see that that's on a path of trajectory that will only increase. And personalization of medicine, for example, at that kind of level, based upon the data that's being fed in, is achievable. It's potential as we move forward into the future. So I think there's a lot there to learn from other sectors around the data piece and enhancing the strategies around the applications of this, particularly within life sciences.
And I think you bring up a really good point, especially on, kind of a retail example, right? Being able to engage with consumers has kind of been status quo for a lot of retail organizations for a long time. But the work that Neeraj has mentioned about being able to kind of engage post-commercial with the life sciences market, with those patients and with those providers, historically, it's been a very, very heavy lift. Neeraj, there's been conversation kind of in the market about how this work and using Gen AI within this work, there can be challenges with patient data and with data privacy. So Neeraj, I want to get your perspective on that, specific from the work that your team's doing, the strategies you guys have put in place. And then Ian, I'd love to kind of hear your perspective and response about, big picture data privacy relative to Gen AI. So Neeraj, over to you first.
Sure. So for me, I know that Gen AI, if we isolate behind the scenes, the whole life cycle of data still applies. So whether it was data ingestion, data quality, data transformation, data to action, which as the data leaders, we all have been working on, those principles still apply. And to be honest, all the more. So we really need to be careful that the whole data trust, data privacy, data security is much more there because of generative AI. Now we know that data can be exposed quite fast, quite speedily, and there would be difficulties in scaling it back. So in that sense, the whole data principles really, really apply. And in that sense, we have to be really strict. So one is that. The second is the observability factor, which is very important. Any of these use cases, as we know, they learn, these models are trained, but then there comes a time, even the data scientists don't know how the models are developing. So that's where it is our true responsibility to make sure not only we create the models, one, it is explainable. We clearly state that this is the objective and this is the outcome we are looking for. And second is the observability, where we observe so that we do not fall into the trap of those infamous use cases where it sort of, does gender bias or race bias or anything of that sort. We make sure that anything in terms of time series or any sort of insights engine which we are developing, we make sure we observe them, we validate them, and then we release them into the market.
Got it. Ian, what's your response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo exactly what Neeraj says there. I think from my perspective, the importance of data strategy has never been more paramount. And it's crucial to be thinking about this before the integration and the application of these GenAI or AI initiatives. I think maintaining that data integrity, as Neeraj has referred to, as well as scalability of feeding that information through the system is going to be harder than ever before, I would say, to achieve. Particularly with the risks of bias creeping into these systems. I think diversifying data sources as well is something that's sometimes underappreciated, and making sure that there is that broader view, as broad as possible within the organizations that obviously are represented on the call today, that you can have access to as part of it. You don't need everything, but also having a better view over these different source systems is going to be important. And also maintaining a human within the loop. I think at SAS, we're very keen, we've been very focused on human centricity within anything we deliver and deploy, but having a human oversight within these systems, having an analysis and making sure there isn't an over-reliance almost on the automation aspect is also crucial to build that trust that I think both Richard and Neeraj referred to at the start. It's very easy to lose trust, but maintaining trust is the main focus of understanding both what's possible, but also what's appropriate to use with these systems and the data that's being provided into them.
Sure. Now, by the examples that each of our panelists have given thus far, we've also kind of hinted at some of the failures that could happen or the failures that are possible within this technology or within over-reliance of this technology. Richard, I want us to switch gears in a minute to a different angle of this conversation. But before we do, just wanted to get your final perspective on some of the additional risks that we might need to be aware of. And at the same time, some additional opportunities that maybe we're not even thinking about.
There's very little to add on what Neeraj and Ian already mentioned, right? So keeping the humans in the loop to minimize the bias, to avoid an over-reliance on the algorithms, I think is really important still, right? It may change over time, but it's still super important, especially if we start using the predictions in a clinical environment, right? We have to make sure that we understand where these predictions come from, and like the black box that we see may be a hindrance there. Overall, I think that within the pharma industry, within the individual companies, we need to rethink the data flows, right? If you look at the typical clinical trials, we get the data in, we do data management processes, we do SETM data sets, the whole CDISC procedures, ADAM data sets, and we analyze. Now, these formats, so to say, are not really suitable for AI or for generative AI. So the question is, how do we make sure that that data gets curated in a way that is also can be used for AI applications? I think that's a bit of a challenge, like the data flow within companies, right? So how do we make sure that people that are or want to work with that data in a different way that we traditionally did, analyzing clinical trials, basically creating clinical study reports and making decisions. If we want to expand that for use, for example, by let's call them data scientists, right? That are not particularly working in the clinical development arena, we have to have different procedures, and I think that is going to be one of the challenges of the future. As Ian said, the challenges don't go away, right? They are just, I think the challenges become more visible now, right? Things that were under the hood are now much more explicit, right? Because for example, people say, okay, we can just do a couple of things with this data and see where we go. right? Okay, that's fine, right? So first of all, you need to make sure that you have the patient consent, etc. But let's assume that's all okay. Do we have the processes in place, for example, that if someone stumbles across an issue in the data, maybe a certain patient population is at higher risk of adverse events, for example, how do we make sure that we have procedures in place that we actually adequately follow up on that information and it doesn't get lost in the depths of organizational setups? I think that is going to be interesting. So I think what's becoming more and more important is not only keeping the human in the loop, but keeping different people in the loop. The collaboration aspect becomes much more important, right? Making sure that people that work with the data have what we call domain knowledge, right? Know what this is all about. I think this is going to be an interesting part of the discussion as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really.
I'm not sure if I diverted too much from your question now, but
no, not at all. I think that's a really good point. And for our audience, it's important to know that there's incredible opportunity of GenAI, and we're already, to your point previously, to the information you've already shared about the CSRs, and to Neeraj's point as well about being able to engage on the commercial side. We're already using GenAI in a lot of different means, but we have to make sure that we're doing it in a smart, strategic way that is understanding and mitigating the risks that could be present. We know that data access and data flow has been a challenge historically. GenAI isn't solving that. To your point, it might be exposing it even more, which means that we really have to understand that foundational layer of data and the information that's being used in order to apply generative AI appropriately. Now, team, obviously there is more that we could cover today. There is so much more that needs to be explored. This is the tip of the top of the iceberg. And unfortunately, we are limited in time today. So because of that, I want to do a very quick lightning round from each of you. I'm going to say a topic and you'll respond with hot, warm, or cold. No follow-up, no elaboration, just hot, warm, or cold. If a topic is a key focus area or something that we're really leaning into right now, it means it's hot. It's hot in the market, it's important. If a topic has potential, but maybe we're still on the fence, it's warm. It's got opportunity to grow, but we're not sure yet, that would be warm. And if a topic is just not realistic, it's not going to happen anytime soon, then it's cold. Neeraj, I'm coming to you first. Using GenAI to enhance customer, patient, and site engagement models, hot, warm, or cold?
Hot, definitely for me.
Hot. I think that might have been an easy tee up for you too. Richard, using GenAI to speed up protocol development, hot, warm, or cold?
Hot.
Hot. Perfect.
Absolutely.
Ian, using GenAI to replace human thought or expertise, hot, warm, or cold?
Oh, it's a tough one. I would say to completely replace warm. We're not there yet. There are some aspects that we can apply this.
I think that goes back to the human in the loop conversation too, right?
Yeah.
Now, let's go ahead and jump into our questions. And I'm seeing one question kind of pop up several times here. So let's ask that. And I'm just reading it through really quickly. Let's ask this to each of our panelists. We're going to give no longer than 60 seconds to each panelist. Neeraj, we're starting with you. What do you see as the next big trend in the use of GenAI within life sciences?
So for me, content generation, because I'm talking more from customer experience perspective. So content generation is the first one, and content consumption. And when I'm speaking from both perspectives, it's not just text I'm talking about. It is text, videos, audios, data, and everything else. And alongside actually the technology creation itself from the technology. So I think those will be the things which we will see, which is already happening, but then it is going to gain momentum.
Love it. Richard, you're up next. 60 seconds at max. What do you see as the next big trend or breakthrough of GenAI in life sciences?
I think we will move away from optimizing our clinical trials to optimizing our clinical programs. That was really short, right?
That's perfect. I think we'll have to follow up with you on LinkedIn to learn more about that one, because I think that there's probably a lot that lies under the hood there that we can dig into. Yeah. Ian, final question with you. What do you see as the next big trend or breakthrough of the use of GenAI? I'm going to say in the life sciences sector, but really from another sector that you could apply to life sciences.
Yeah, I mean, even within life sciences, I think there's a lot of promise, as I mentioned, around the concept of personalized medicine. Tailoring treatments to individual genetic profiles is something that I know is being explored at the moment to improve efficacy and then reducing those side effects that we unfortunately all have as part of that process often. So I think that's an area that there's a lot of exploration at the moment. I think there's a lot of interest. We're not there yet, but it'd be interesting to see where that goes in the future for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Ian. Now to our panelists, thank you guys so much for joining us today as we started to barely unpack the importance of generative AI in life sciences. To our audience, thanks for joining the conversation, and stay tuned for more Analytics in 20 webinars. You can also hear more on our podcast, The Health Pulse. We just launched season 5 of our Health Pulse podcast, and trust me, you definitely want to check out the conversations that are happening. As always, stay connected, stay healthy, and stay curious about the world of health, data, and analytics. Bye now.